There's a hidden physics problem that has haunted ship captains for over a century, and right now it's threatening to choke 5% of all global trade. Every year, roughly 14,000 vessels transit the Panama Canal, one of the most important shipping corridors on Earth. Every single one of them faces the same invisible danger the moment they enter its waters. The ships get heavier. Not because anyone adds cargo, not because of rain collecting on deck, they get heavier because the water changes. And if a captain doesn't account for that change, a fully loaded cargo ship can scrape the bottom of the canal, run aground, or block a passage that 40% of all American container traffic depends on. This is the freshwater draft trap. And to understand why it matters more right now than at any point in the canal's 112-year history, we need to start with something deceptively simple: the difference between salt and fresh. Seawater has a density of roughly 1,025 kilograms per cubic meter. Freshwater sits at about 1,000. That's a difference of just 2.5%. Sounds trivial, it is anything but. That small gap in density changes how much force water exerts upward on a ship's hull. Salt water is heavier, so it pushes harder. A vessel floating in the ocean rides higher, and the same vessel, carrying the exact same cargo, sinks deeper the moment it enters fresh water. The technical term for how deep a ship sits in the water is its draft, and in freshwater, the draft increases. For a large container ship, that increase is dramatic. A vessel can drop nearly a foot deeper into the water, sometimes more. And here's why that matters. The Panama Canal is not an ocean passage. It's a freshwater system. Every ship that enters it leaves the salt behind and floats into Gatun Lake, a massive man-made freshwater reservoir created on June 27, 1913, when the gates of the spillway at Gatun Dam were closed. A ship loaded to its maximum safe depth in the Pacific Ocean will exceed that safe depth the moment it enters the canal's freshwater locks. If no one plans for this, the bottom of the hull gets dangerously close to the bottom of the channel. Humanity didn't always understand this problem. The story of how we figured it out is written in the lives of thousands of drowned sailors. In the 19th century, merchant shipping was booming. Global trade had reached every corner of the planet, and the pressure to move more cargo faster was immense. Unscrupulous ship owners looking to maximize profits began overloading their vessels. They crammed holds full of iron, coal, grain, whatever would sell on the other end. And they did it with no standard, no regulation, no line on the hull telling anyone when the ship was too heavy. These vessels were called coffin ships. They earned the name. Enter Samuel Plimsoll, a British member of Parliament who refused to look away. Plimsoll championed a radical idea that every merchant vessel should carry a marking on its hull, a line that told the world exactly how deep that ship could safely sit in the water. Load the ship past the line, and you were breaking the law. In 1876, the Merchant Shipping Act made the Plimsoll mark compulsory on all British merchant ships, and the drop in the accident rate for sailors was dramatic. Plimsoll passed through history as the friend of the sailor. But the Plimsoll line wasn't just one line, it was a system of lines, each corresponding to different water conditions. And this is exactly where the freshwater draft trap enters the story. If you look at the hull of any commercial ship today, you'll see a circle, 300 millimeters in diameter, with a horizontal line through its center, painted amidships on both sides. Around it sits a series of horizontal marks, each labeled with letters: S for summer, W for winter, T for tropical, WNA for winter North Atlantic, representing the harshest conditions a ship might face. And then there are two more, F for freshwater and TF for tropical freshwater. Those freshwater marks exist because naval architects and regulators recognize that a ship loaded safely for the ocean would be over its limit the moment it entered a river, an estuary, or a freshwater port. The TF mark, tropical freshwater, represents the deepest a vessel is ever permitted to sit. It accounts for both the warm, calm conditions of the tropics and the lower density of freshwater. For a ship with a 12-meter summer draft, the tropical mark sits about 25 centimeters higher on the hull, which translates to roughly 1,500 extra tons of cargo capacity for a Panamax-sized vessel. That's the margin. That's the difference between floating safely and greeting the canal floor. Before 1876, sailors navigated that uncertainty blind. Ships jettisoned cargo mid-voyage to lighten themselves, avoiding disaster solely because water density had changed between departure and arrival. The Plimsoll system turned guesswork into science. But science only works if the conditions it accounts for remain stable. And that brings us to the Panama Canal's modern crisis. The canal opened on August 15, 1914, after 32 years of construction, a failed French attempt that killed roughly 20,000 workers, and an American effort that claimed another 5,600 lives. The total death toll across both attempts is estimated between 25 and 30,000 people. Journalist Arthur Bullard, surveying the completed canal, wrote in awe, "Never before has man dreamed of taking such liberties with nature. Those liberties came with a catch. The canal's lock system requires enormous volumes of fresh water to operate. Every single vessel that transits the canal consumes roughly 52.8 million gallons of fresh water under normal conditions. That water comes from Gatun Lake and Alhajuela Lake. And after filling the locks to raise and lower ships, approximately 200 million liters of it gets dumped into the sea per transit. The canal doesn't recycle this water. It uses it and sends it to the ocean, which means the entire operation depends on rainfall replenishing those lakes. For most of its history, Panama's tropical climate provided enough rain to keep the system running. But climate change and the El Niño weather pattern have started breaking that equation. In 2023, Panama experienced its driest October on record and its driest period since 1950. A strong El Niño sharply reduced rainfall across Central America, and Gatun Lake, the 163 square mile reservoir that fills the canal's locks, dropped to 79.6 feet in August 2023, well below its normal operating range. The Panama Canal Authority responded by cutting daily transits from the normal 36 to 38 vessels down to just 24. By February 2024, that figure had fallen to 18 per day, a record low in the canal's history. And here's where the freshwater draft trap becomes an economic weapon. When water levels fall, the Canal Authority has no choice but to reduce the maximum allowed draft for ships transiting the locks. During the 2023 to 2024 crisis, draft limits were slashed to as low as 44 feet for Neo-Panamax vessels. For every foot of lost draft, container ships lose capacity for approximately 350 20-foot equivalent units, or TEUs. A loss of 6 feet of draft means 2,100 containers that can't be loaded. Some ships had to reduce their container loads by as much as 40% just to transit the canal during the worst of the restrictions. Think about what that means in practice. A ship designed to carry 14,000 containers might have to leave 5,000 or 6,000 of them behind. Those containers don't disappear. They sit in ports, they wait. Supply chains stretch, prices rise, and the ripple effects touch everyone, from manufacturers in Shanghai to consumers in Chicago. The canal generates roughly $5.7 billion in revenue annually and contributes an estimated $4.2 billion to Panama's domestic economy, representing about 3.4% of the nation's GDP. The United States is the canal's largest user, with around 40% of U.S. container traffic passing through it. China is the second largest, accounting for 21.4% of cargo volume. When the canal slows down, the world's two largest economies feel it. Now, there's a twist in this story, a hopeful one but complicated. By early 2026, Panama's weather shifted dramatically. Heavy rains filled the reservoirs faster than anyone expected. By March 2026, Gatun and Alajuela had reached their highest March levels in the entire recorded water history of the Panama Canal. IX Murillo, the Canal Authority's hydrology manager, stated, "For the first time in history, the levels of the Gatun and Alajuela reservoirs for the month of March are at the highest in the recorded water history of the Panama Canal. Our water reserves are robust enough to face what remains of this relatively dry 2026 season." By February 2026, Gatun Lake had surged to 88.9 feet, actually triggering a preventive water discharge through the dam because the reservoir had hit maximum operational capacity. They had too much water. After nearly losing the canal to drought, they were now managing a flood. But the relief is temporary. NOAA has flagged a high probability of a strong El Niño forming in late 2026, with an 81% chance of it reaching very strong status. The pattern is projected to continue into early 2027. Reading that forecast, the Canal Authority has already begun preemptive action. On July 3, 2026, the maximum authorized draft at the Neo-Panamax locks was reduced to 49.5 feet, down from the design maximum of 50. By July 24th, it dropped again to 49 feet. On August 15th, it fell to 48.5. Further reductions to 48 feet are scheduled for August 26th and 47.5 feet for September 3rd. Each half-foot reduction squeezes more cargo off more ships, and the cycle begins again. This is why the Panama Canal Authority is pursuing the most ambitious infrastructure project since the canal's original construction, the Rio Indio Reservoir. The Rio Indio is a 98-kilometer river flowing through Coclé and Colon provinces to the Caribbean. The plan is to dam it and create a reservoir covering 4,600 hectares connected to Gatun Lake via a tunnel that is 8,350 meters long and 4.5 meters in diameter. The project carries a price tag of $1.6 billion, with construction scheduled to begin in 2027 and finish by 2032. If built, the reservoir is expected to secure the canal's freshwater supply for the next 50 years. Panama Canal Administrator Recorde Vasquez Morales has confirmed the authority is ready to proceed. President José Raúl Mulino has thrown his full support behind it, declaring, "Whoever opposes Rio Indio opposes progress, opposes more water for people, and more water resources for the canal." But the project carries a serious human cost. The reservoir would displace dozens of farming communities, affecting roughly 2,500 residents. $400 million of the total budget is allocated specifically for compensating and relocating those people. Protests have risen. Farmers in the Rio Indio Basin are fighting displacement. The tension between global commerce and local communities is playing out in real time, in the villages that would vanish beneath the waterline. There's another concern that adds urgency to all of this. Don Marcus, president of the International Organization of Masters, Mates, and Pilots, has issued a stark warning about the canal's existing infrastructure. The Panama Canal Authority has allowed conditions to deteriorate to the point where it is only a matter of time before disaster strikes, and it has the potential to affect international trade to a far greater extent than the grounding of Ever Given in the Suez Canal in March 2021. He's not speaking hypothetically. The Canal Authority reportedly has 46 tugboats, but many are so old that spare parts can no longer be obtained for them. The 2016 Neo-Panamax expansion, which doubled the canal's capacity for modern vessels, saw 3 incidents within weeks of opening. The most serious involved the Chinese container vessel Xinfei Zhou, which struck a wall while transiting on the Atlantic side. If a lock gate in the expanded canal were destroyed, repairs could take months, and during that time, the canal would be closed to every Neo-Panamax ship on the planet. Historically, roughly 1 out of every 4,000 vessels transiting the canal has been involved in an accident. About 60% of those accidents involve either collisions with other vessels or contact with the canal walls. As ships grow larger, as draft restrictions tighten, and as the margins between hull and canal floor shrink, the probability of a catastrophic incident climbs. Disruptions elsewhere in global shipping have only amplified how much the world depends on the Panama Canal. 3/4 of the cargo passing through it is either destined for or originates from American ports. There is no practical alternative route for most of this traffic. The canal isn't just a convenience, it's a choke point, and choke points, by definition, are vulnerable. So where does this leave us? The freshwater draft trap is not a flaw in ship design. It's a fact of physics that the Plimsoll system solved over a century ago, at least in theory. Every captain who enters the Panama Canal today knows their ship will sit deeper. They plan for it. They calculate the freshwater allowance. They check the TF line on the hull. But the trap has evolved. It's no longer just about how deep a single ship sits in the water. It's about how much water there is to sit in at all. When Drought drops the level of Gatun Lake, the Canal Authority doesn't just worry about ships sinking too deep. They worry about the lake itself disappearing. Every transit consumes tens of millions of gallons of irreplaceable fresh water, and every container that doesn't make it through the canal is a small fracture in the global supply chain. Samuel Plimsoll drew a line on a hull and saved thousands of lives. The question facing the Panama Canal today is whether a line on a map, the boundary of a new dam across the Rio Indio, can save the future of global shipping. The physics haven't changed since 1876. Water is still water. Salt still makes it denser, ships still sink deeper and fresh, but the stakes have never been higher. 5% of everything the world trades passes through a 50-mile ribbon of fresh water in Central America, and that water is running out. The line on the hull tells you how deep you can go, but nobody has drawn the line that tells us how low the lake can fall before the canal stops working entirely. That's the real draft trap. And we're watching it unfold right now.